This episode was jam-packed full of content and just had a lot of information to be given, which I think was great considering the down note last episode ended on.
Hunter x Hunter episode 86, A Promise and Reunion.
Well, hello my brothers and sisters and hunters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, and I'm here to bring you another review on the awesome and training-filled tale of Hunter x Hunter. Now, following the demoralizing events of the last episode, which ultimately ended in us seeing Neferpitou sitting there stroking the hair, which was on the head, that has no longer attached to Kite's body, we obviously assumed and deduced that Neferpitou took out Kite and was able to obviously do it very easily and handily, as we didn't even see any of the fight. So that is how things left off. Things actually pick up over here, and pretty much the majority of the focus is on Gon and Killua and them having to become stronger to then be able to be allowed to even go back into the NGL per Chairman Netero and what he put in front of them and whatnot. So these two wooden tokens that were given to Killua are basically, he has to find the other halves of them once they identify and find these assassins that they're going to have to take out. So they wind up in this nearest town outside of NGL, wherever the hell they are. They wind up walking into the place in the last episode where they had, on that board, the dry erase board, the chalkboard, and it's now been erased. And all of a sudden, this creepy bitch with this like straggly, wet-looking black hair looks like the chick from the movie The Ring, if you've ever seen that. And she's creepy too. Her name is Palm. She introduces herself and basically goes and sits down to have some tea with Gon and Killua. We find out that she's just someone who likes to ramble on and on and on about things. To remind you of anybody? Anyway, I'm not here to judge, especially myself. Turns out, though, that she is actually the tall, skinny hunter guy that came in as one of Netero's right-hand man, or actually left-hand man. His name was Nav. She's actually his student. She was pissed off that she's not allowed to go into the NGL, so she begged and complained and bitched and whatever, and eventually, basically, they took her and put her on this task of, finding Gon and Killua and explaining that Gon and Killua, before they got 1 month to be able to go and actually find and defeat these guys, Knuckle and Shoot. Knuckle and Shoot are students of the other dude, Moral, who's got the big bat, the big hulking dude, and apparently only one team is going to get to enter the NGL. So if Palm helps Gon and Killua to train and to, of course, eventually find Knuckle and Shoot, and they can defeat them, they're the ones that, of course, have the other halves of those blocks, and then they have obtained those, they will then be allowed, their team will be allowed admittance into the NGL to obviously help and be part of that suppressive force to go and take out the Chimera Ant, Queen, and King. And the king hasn't been born yet, but we find out that Netero and his group are in there for the next month to basically just kind of observe and see what's going on, deduce the forces and everything else, and that they think that the king is going to be born within 2 months' time. So anyway, the majority of this chapter, though, or episode, I should say, is based on this whole kind of build-up and training to. Gon still believes Kite's alive and wants to rush in there to go and save him, so he says, we got a month, let's do it in a week. We wind up finding after the halfway point of the episode, the break, that Bisky is brought back into the mix. And I actually liked Bisky a lot. So she's been brought back in by Palm, the creepy chick, to go and actually train Gon and Killua. And she tells them about how they got to go and be able to maintain their Ren for 3 hours. And Killua at this point can do 55 minutes tops, right? And she explains to him, she's like, normally it takes a month just to add 10 minutes to your Ren. You guys aren't going to be able to get much sleep because you got to do this, get up to 3 hours as the first stage of this training. And you got to do it in under the month period of time. She also goes and says that Netero is basically an evil, sadistic freak in a lot of ways. If he gave him a month to complete something, it should take people a year. Now, if we know anything about Gon and Killua, though, it's that they can rise to the occasion and the challenge. So, for the most part, we get some more back and forth, slapping them around, Bisky beating the shit out of them type of training. But we also go and we find out more, obviously, like I said, from Palm and how they're going to get in there, what Netero and his guys are doing and everything else. We also get a check-in with Neferpitou, and she's got Kite's body laying there with his head, and apparently maybe she found his arm or something like that, laying in this sort of like ice coffin case or whatever, and she's creepy. She's sitting there talking about how she wants to fight him once more. So could this be something where Kite can actually be resurrected, where he wasn't actually killed? Somehow he's powerful enough to where his Nen can kind of bring him back to life, or is she going to try to bring him back as some kind of reanimated corpse? I really don't know. It's a little bit creepy to begin with. So we also wind up getting a check-in with Netero and Moral and Nav and what their whole situation, how they're going to go in and attack things and do things and everything else. And what I liked, and it also made me scared, was that Netero goes and sizes up Neferpitou and basically says that she's stronger than him. And again, this is just one of the 3 royal guards, right? And Netero is one of the strongest dudes on the planet as far as Nen users. Now, Nav and Moral don't agree with him. Moral especially doesn't agree with him, because he's the one that thinks that, any outcome can happen and blah, 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 and this and that. So he winds up going and taking and putting some kind of magical mist rabbits that he has or whatever, part of his power, and kind of sending them out to go and judge the enemy's forces and what they have. And he thinks that they should basically, like assassins, come in and kill the ants one by one by one, right? Neferpitou, though, winds up feeling that shit just as soon as he sends them out because she's next level. She's on some another level type of shit. Anyway, the episode winds up ending off with them revealing and showing us the second of the 3 royal guards. And for the life of me, I cannot pronounce that dude's name. But anyway, we wind up kind of seeing what the next formidable opponent's going to be. But you know what really gets me about this whole situation, and it was a great episode in a lot of different respects, is that, Gon and Killua are training just to be able to get into the NGL, right? And Gon and his positive mentality and outlook on life, is telling him that, hey, we got to get in there and we got to save Kite. We know, or at least we think, that Kite is dead. But ultimately, if Netero is one of the strongest dudes in the world, and he's saying that just one of the guards, one of the royal guards of this soon-to-be-born Chimera Ant King. Now, the Queen, I don't know what her strength is. I think she's basically protected by her minions. I'm not thinking that she's not super strong as far as that goes. But supposedly, they're alluding to the king being on some other level shit, right? But we've already got just the first of 3 royal guards that's on some next level shit. And then we've got the next one coming out, which we didn't see a lot of power-wise and everything else. But now that these ants are evolving and they're taking on some of the traits of humans, and ultimately they've learned how to go and use and utilize Nen and the powers that bring it with that, this is going to be some shit, man. I don't even know how we can... I don't know how humanity can survive at this point, is what I'm saying. Because if one of the strongest Nen users in the world doesn't even think he's up to the task of being able to take down one of the 3 royal guards of the king, how in the fuck are we gonna ever defeat the king? I mean, oh, man. Absolutely wonderful how this is all written and woven together, and I can see how a lot of you have told me, obviously you can back up the claim or it can be backed up, and this is just from the anime, how great of a writer Togashi is, and it's such a shame that he's so inconsistent with things, because this is a guy that really, he writes some really cool scenarios that make you think and make, man, just very, very cool stuff. So anyway, that's where the episode ended off and what have you. And my episode question for you, brothers and sisters, is ultimately, what are your thoughts on the appearance of the second royal guard of the king over there? And then, of course, too, anybody who can help me on maybe pronunciation and whatnot as well of that. And I'm certain that I'll wrap my mind around it for the next episode and the next ones to come. So it was just a little bit of a tongue twister for me initially there, and I was looking and I was like, and then I was trying to get everything, and I do all this stuff in one take over here. I don't have notes or anything written out as a script or anything like that. But, I was trying to remember Nav and Moral, and then obviously Moral's subordinates that, Killua and Gon ultimately have to defeat, which is Knuckle and Shoot. And there was even a part 2 where Knuckle was walking around town on a megaphone trying to call out Gon and Killua. They don't know who they are, but trying to call them out to fight them. And ultimately, it was just a tactic to try to see if anybody would react and if they could gain any more information on their opponents, right? And then, of course, Shoot was probably somewhere in the shadows looking for that. So, very cool stuff, though. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We look forward to catching all of you in the next one, Nation.
If you have watched this far, I want to thank you very much and encourage you to check out my Facebook and Twitter.